If y'all don't know Big Mike, man, this guy is, I mean, Keenan, you could tell him more, but this guy is one of the best waivers of all time. Like,
Yo,
talk about micro isolations. If you haven't checked him out, like, you gotta check this dude out. It's too bad it's crazy because like footage never does him justice quite right, you know?
nah,
Like in
nah.
person, there's a certain like charisma like that just there's no way. Like he's really this huge dude doing these crazy micro isolations with character and like theatrics, you know?
Yo, he was like a beam of light for like a lot of young dancers in New York because there was so much strictness on like being, I guess, conventional or I guess like
Yeah.
traditional. And a lot of us, we felt comfortable with being traditional because we come from a lot of these cultures and like we want to rep the culture and have something that we all could share and identify with. But we also wanted to put ourselves into the culture and into the craftsmanship of the dances and the movements that we were doing. And Big Mike was one of those people that like was so traditional, but then so unconventional at the same time. It was like he found a way to come up with like ways to do the most traditional thing in the most Big Mike way. And like for us young dancers watching that on like Union Square and just like any
Yeah.
part of the streets where dudes is dancing, like it was a big inspiration and big motivation for a lot of us.
Yeah, he inspires so many people, man. I think like, well, this is like a perfect transition, man, because like this is one thing I don't see documented a lot is just the kind of history, more recent history of New York and the styles. But you know, Big Mike had his beginnings in Brookup, right? And
Yeah,
then he transitioned into more popping through what was the OG's name? That was
Crazy
out there?
Pop. Crazy Pop was
Crazy.
his homie Crazy Pop. The story he told me was that he actually went to high school with like Reg and a lot of the original like ringmasters in main event. And in the late 90s, early 2000s, even almost the mid 90s, like dance hall culture was like really strong in Brooklyn. Like everywhere you walked, there was like a dance hall vibe. We had like Labor Day, we had the carnivals, like a lot of things in Brooklyn, specifically like Flatbush, Crown Heights, parts of Bed-Stuy, East New York, Brownsville areas. Like those parts of Brooklyn were like just dance hall reggae out. Like everything was dance hall reggae culture, and it's a testament to like the people that moved there from like the West Indies and the Caribbean and stuff like that. So Mike grew up in a lot of that, and he was a part of like that movement of like just high school kids, doing the bruck up, taking your heart, throw it in the air, shoot it. Like he came from
Hmm.
that era of like New York street dance, and then what he told me was that like for him Bruck up and like just that style of movement was just a little bit too incomplete for him, and he
Mm.
comes from like a weightlifting background, so his thing is always about pushing limits. So he was
Mm.
trying to figure out like how could I take what I like to do and just enhance it, and he just kept searching for like what he considered as the most enhanced form of movement, and that's what kind of led him to popping because at the time, popping was probably one of the most like technical movement styles out there. Like it had its rhythm, it had its cadence, it had its techniques and styles, but it was really focused on technique. And then he kind of submerged himself into that scene and developed to be the Big Mike that we know now.
Yeah. Damn, that's crazy, man. Like, and just to backtrack a little bit, that like that New York 90s dance hall reggae, was there a recent migration of Jamaicans and people from Trinidad, or was that foundation laid long before that?
Yo, it's really weird because like when I was in Paris for the last Fusion concept that I was a part of, Steen had did this documentary on like this Bronx crew called the Steam Team, and he was just like, it's like Steen in the '90s, like mad young, all
Yeah.
around the Bronx dancing with these original b-boys. And there was this one part of the documentary where like they had this one dude that had like a super like Caribbean accent, and he was like pop locking, but he was like doing like pop locking electric boogie, but it was to like reggae music, like some
Mm.
like Sean Paul. And Steen was like, yo, this is the 90s, this is what it was about. So I feel like the migration of the music was already there. Um, and I feel like depending on where you were at regionally, depending on what you did your dance to. So for example, like if you were in Brooklyn and I guess like you may have electric boogie or whatever, how you got down, you weren't you did it to hip hop or whatever songs that were catered to the style, but you also didn't limit it to the things around you. Like kids in the 80s growing up in Brooklyn, they was listening to reggae. Kids in the 90s, reggae. So you probably 9 times out of 10 was like pop into reggae. And I think a lot of that vibration of what's going on in Brooklyn is kind of like what set the precedent for even things like Flexing and Bruck Up to be created, you know? I
Mm.
know when it comes to like the Flexing and Bruck Up scene, they're like super like prideful and religious. They like to like keep their history secure and be like, nah, we created this and we think. And a lot of it is true, you know, a lot of the stuff and a lot of the innovations that you see in street dance today, they stem from like a lot of flexers, specifically people like Storyboard. But at the same time, from what I used to see, like I saw Elite Force videos where dudes doing like hip hop movements and that shit looks straight up like flexing. I saw like
Mm.
old electric boogie cats, like old footage of electric boogie cats in the 80s and 90s, like random Europeans that will go to New York and document like the birth and rise of hip hop, like as it was growing. And you see all these different perspectives of different people from different parts of New York, not just the Bronx. And the styles used to look identically similar to a lot of the things that not just like flexing or Brucka, but even things in Litefeet that we do today, you know.
Yeah, man, it brings up this kind of topic that I always think about is like, c culture is so fluid and it's always evolving, and the thing about movement, the thing about dance is that it's beautiful in the fact that it's abstract in the sense that it's can't really be defined by a single word. And
Yeah,
then but it's like the con to that is that it doesn't, like, not everybody can understand it either, in the sense of like marketing or whatever, like any type of economics that come into play. But it's just kind of like the culture, the migration, like so much is happening around the world and little influences, and then little stuff starts to kind of like, radiate, something becomes like, oh, that's undeniably dope. So
yeah,
like that just gets into the fabric of a community. And then it becomes like, where does the transition between what one person does become like a fabric of the community? And community is not culture, right? So then when does the community start to become like a culture, you know?
yeah, yeah. It's wild, man. Like when I look at street dance, I always say that it's like a combination of like cultural dances, like what you see, like the Haka dance or like some of like the native African dances, and then like movement arts. Because
Mm.
essentially somebody waving or like the concept of what waving is, like I can't say that's like rooted in one culture. Like you watch old Hindustan like performances when they're doing like the Bachevas and the Thousand Hands, and it's waves. You know what I mean? You watch like a
Yep.
lot of old dances back in the day. They're doing things that look kind of robotic or look kind of mechanical. I mean, there are a lot of movement arts that we implement in these dances, gymnastics and aerobics and things of that nature that come from just what I consider movement arts, things that individuals developed all around the world just to kind of push the arts of the human body forward, you know? And
Hmm.
then there's the social dances. There's like the tone wop or like the Roger Rabbit, like those playful dances, and then those cultural dances that come out of those different dance style scenes. And I think those are the things that make us a culture as far as like community, because those are the things that we share and identify with. And then when it's time to explore, we tap into like our movement arts and we start to go into different worlds with what we do with our movement. But because street dance is a combination of those two things, I always feel like a lot of like just madness of the mind comes. Like you start thinking like, do I do this because it's cultural, or do I explore because I want to explore movement, or do I, it's like a whole bunch of like madness that goes on in your brain because it's not one set thing. It's not like you're just doing like salsa or you're just learning merengue. It's like you're learning a style and then you're given tools within that style to now expand on it, but then try to still stay true to the roots. So I think it unconsciously burrows a lot of confusion in like the dancer's mind. So it also brings
Mm.
up a lot of confusing topics, or just a lot of like confusing thoughts that go all around.
Yeah, yeah, I think that you see that when people get down too. You can see
Mm,
it like you can see when somebody's dancing with a question in their mind, you know? Like
yeah.
it's tough, man. The anxiety gets provoked, you know, the insecurities come up because you start to feel like, wait, am I doing the real thing? Am I, like I think I may have told you this story before, but like when I was teaching a workshop in Argentina and you know they like I had judged a couple battles and they're getting down and I could see them kind of like looking out of the corner of their eye for some type of like approval in some way. Not
Hmm.
all of them, but a lot of them, and it makes sense. But I remember when I entered a battle, I don't even like so I forget who the judges are. Like
Yeah.
that's not even my thought. If that's part of my thought, my flow is gonna be all
Yeah.
jumbled. So like when I was teaching the workshop, and I'm teaching them about popping, it's like, and if I play funk, they didn't have a certain relationship to the sound, like you couldn't see it embodied because like when I'm in LA and I go to like say like the Poppers Picnic or I'm chilling with some
Hmm.
OGs, like you see that song come on and it's like the nostalgia, you see the eyes
You
glaze
just
over,
feel it.
you can
Yo.
feel it. As soon as they're hitting it, they're like boom, and they can just like just that hit. You can just feel
Yo.
like an essence, So when I was in Argentina and I saw these guys pop, I'm like what is it? I was just with y'all last night. We were partying, and it was cumbia, like cumbia's on, right?
Mm.
And they're wilding out, and I'm like, yo, this is cool, like everybody's having fun, but I like they were singing the lyrics, it was like a whole thing, everybody knew the song, they were going crazy to it, and then when I turn on funk, it's like nothing, so then I was like, okay, look, this is what we're gonna do. I play like a cumbia track, and I have them
Mm.
practice pop into it, and all of a sudden I was like, oh shit, that's popping, right? Because it was more of like a connection to uh, an energy source from the sound that you're
Yeah.
getting. Yeah,
They can relate. I think when it came to the funk, uh, they're probably looking at it, and I'm just assuming, but they're probably looking at it like everything now becomes cosmetic. Like I have to do what I see because I didn't grow up in funk, so my interpretation is just going to
hmm,
be what I visually see. Versus when you put on the cumbia, it's like that's something that's in their heart because they came up with it. So now
yep,
they take the tools that they learned from you and they can apply it to what they came up with. And I think to me that's a more rich way of learning dance because you're kind of meeting in the middle with the people that you're teaching. You're giving them a
yeah,
chance to explore what you're sharing with them, but in a realm that's comfortable for them, so that when they now go out to it, they can still keep those same mannerisms. Like now that they're practicing to the cumbia, there's a chance that if they hear funk again, they can now tap into that cumbia nature and try to match it with the funk and then still be able
yeah,
to stay on that same pace and that same rhythm. So, yo,
yeah.
trust
Like
me,
just
man.
trying to bridge that, just trying to bridge that gap.
Hmm.
Like let's get that energy crossing over to different sounds.
Yeah.
Um,
And again, I
like
think it talks about, I think it goes with the combination because, like I said, like street dance is like a combination of that cultural movement and then those movement arts. Like, for example, if we were salsa dancers, like we can't play like Nas New York State of Mind and still try to traditionally salsa. It would feel off because of the fact that
yeah,
like salsa has a certain kind of like cadence
count,
to it and a
yeah,
certain count
yeah.
in song. But with popping, you can pop to anything because of the movement arts quality that it has in it.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get what you're saying with the movement arts. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, man. It's real interesting. Like, I've been kind of like studying these other styles now that I have all this time, like, and this thing keeps coming up, but like I didn't like house music, and it was crazy that I was in New York a lot of this time. Like when I would go there, like almost every year in the summer, I go to Funk Box, like I'd be around like house heads, And in LA, I'm around like a lot of really dope house heads, and I would go to these house events, but dude, I would fall asleep, man. I couldn't, I couldn't do it. There was no, it didn't catch me at all. And then I don't know what happened recently, bro. It was so strange because I always love soul music, like whether it's jazz or blues,
Mm,
like when people ad libs, it hits me in a certain way, but when you have that
definitely so.
repetitiveness, yeah, yeah, like you have this repetitiveness. I couldn't find like any ounce of soul in there, right? And so
Mm,
I started to play with maracas too. Like I found maracas in my garage, and I was like playing with them, and I was like really trying to tap into different rhythms, and like then I was like, why don't I just try and do this with my feet to house, And then
mm,
I went to open house and like maybe a week before quarantine, and CoFlow put on a set, and it was all Afro house, and I was like listening to it, and it's like real instruments, so it just drove me. It was like, oh, okay, that's it, and so then I
yeah.
just realized uh, it's interesting how you could just be on a path. Like I've been dancing for 10 years, and all of a sudden, like I did not, house was not even on my radar. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, you like house now. And that just like, that's going to alter my movement completely.
Yeah, nah, for real, yo, dude. It's hard for me to even like talk dance sometimes because I started dancing really late. Like at least in my opinion, I started dancing like when I was like a teenager, almost a young adult. So a lot of my life, like I didn't even move my body, you know what I mean? So to even think now, like I'm a dancer, I'm like, whoa, you know what I mean? Because as a kid, a teenager, I used to be like this like super like by myself drawing, like only hang out with my cousins or specific people. Like to think that I'm around people from all over the world and doing movement, it's like it still bugs me a lot. So my journey when it came to like music and dance was kind of similar to you. Like I never really liked house music. Matter of fact, when I used to go to Funk Box, I used to be almost like sleeping in the corner sometimes, like
That's what I'm
listening
saying, bro.
because I
I was probably in the other corner, bro.
like I would be in the circle and I'll be like, okay, I'm jamming, I'm trying to jam people are ciphering, and then like it hits like 2:30 and I'm like, yo, I need to sit down, yo, and I'm just like passing out. But I think originally what made me not understand like not just house, I feel like all the styles outside of like the lifey culture and hip hop culture that I came up in was that it was hard for me to relate. Like I didn't understand the thought process of where they were pulling from constructing the music, the history and
Mm,
the heritage behind it. So because I didn't know that, I felt like it was hard for me to relate to that time and era and try to bring it back to like the 2000s and try to make sense of it. To me, it was just like, ugh. And I
yeah,
even experienced that with Litefeet at first. Like, I remember first listening to certain Litefeet songs, and I was like, I don't get it. You know what I mean? Like, it
yeah,
didn't hit me until I started to like do Litefeet outside and be amongst Litefeet energy outside, and like, oh, this is where it's pulling. This is where they're pulling it from. And then the
yeah,
music
yeah,
started to make sense, and then I was even able to find out what kind of lifey songs that I like and what kind of lifey textures that I like to listen to. And the same goes for hip hop, and all kinds of genres of music. It was literally like for me a learning process of just like, wow, I didn't like this, and now like a couple of years later, I'm doing this, or I'm dancing to this with I don't know if you would call it like P funk or I don't know like for popping music because I know they have like popping
mm,
beats, but then they
yeah,
have
yeah,
like
yeah.
the like
P Funk, yeah.
I remember like Mike tried to put me onto like a lot of the funk in the 70s. And a lot of that I was
Mm,
like, nah, bro, I don't get this. You know what I mean? Like some of the records are just like fucking 7, 10 minutes, and you just didn't.
Oh
I just didn't
yeah.
understand. But then I had to really do my digging and like realize like what was going on in the mind to construct some of this music, and it was like, ah, okay, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, man, it's like all it's such a total package. Like you when you start to understand the history, also like the origins, also why the music, like why does what creates sound? Like why did they even create funk? You know, like what was it?
Right.
It was about, it was liberation, it was like, there was all types of cultural things that were going on at that time that produced that sound. And like you could do the same thing with any type of music, whether it's hip hop, whether it's like Litefeet music, or whether it's trap music.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, like I think it's interesting to think about because I feel like that's where dancers really get the short end of the stick a lot of the time because the musicians they like it's almost like we're a big part of making that music like a part of the culture. Like we're
Hmm.
a part of bridging that gap from sound to like people enjoying it. And
Yeah.
like same with trap, it was like, you know, I I was listening to trap in junior high. Like my friend was listening to it in elementary school, like in 3 6 Mafia and Juicy J and all these guys like but like I didn't really get it. And then when I started to see Jookin and I was like, oh, you could do that to it?
Yeah.
And then I was like, "Pfft,
Mm.
that's crazy. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, like now I got the feel. Like when I went the first night I had in Memphis, I was on Beale Street. I went to a club and I, this 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 older black lady comes up to me. She goes, you gotta learn the Memphis bounce. And I was like, I was like, I was like, yo, teach me, please.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I'm a sore thumb right now. So she teaches me the like the downfield and this bounce that they have, and I was like, damn, like, okay, I get it.
Yeah, man. Yo, dude, I remember when I first spoke to G Nerd back in Toronto, Area 51, and he just broke down Jicken for me. And then I spoke to Dr. Rico at Stacking Styles, and just hearing them, I'm like, yo, I thought I knew it all, yo, but you don't be like, damn. It's because for me, their information is so crazy because I'm not even thinking about Tennessee on the map. I'm just thinking about like, yo, who lives in Tennessee? You know what I mean? Like, so to hear that like some place that just like you grow up not even hearing much about has so much culture, so much rhythm, so much different. You're like, God damn, because let's be
Yeah,
honest, as kids, like all we know is New York, California, Japan, London. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
Texas, but
yeah,
it's just
yeah,
like you're just limited to certain places. So to hear like
yeah,
I'm gonna be honest, like that whole 3 6 Mafia and all that stuff like that, like I heard about it as a kid, but I got onto it late too, like because I didn't
mm,
understand it. Like it was hard to relate. A lot of my friends picked up on it, and got on the wave, but it took me a while to be like, oh shit, I get it now. So I feel you,
yeah,
bro. I feel you.
yeah. Yeah, going to Memphis was like it was. I had been watching them for a long time. Like since I started popping, like they came up on a YouTube search that I did, like actually before I even started popping. And
Mm,
'cause I started to look up like I saw the documentary Rise. And
mm,
I like Rise is the first time that I was shown movement and I was
mm,
like like there's something I'm getting drawn towards it. I'm getting drawn towards Crump.
mm,
And I saw that documentary when it first came out, but I was so like my culture, my upbringing was there was not a dancer in sight, like until like in high school when I was going to house parties and stuff. But like my father doesn't even like music. Like that I've
what?
never met a person like that. I still ask him, I'm like, Dad, you still don't like music?
Like he
Like
doesn't listen to me. Like he doesn't listen to music.
like I'm like,
Yo,
wait, so
oh,
like
wow.
I'll run tracks by him and I'm like, how about this one? Like like, and no,
Wow.
it's like he's like, yeah, it's like he looks at it almost as like everything is very logical, you know, like very
Mm,
like he's just a very analytical guy, so it's kind of like uh it has to just make sense. Like
mm.
to enjoy art to him is like very abstract. Like, you know, like he would never go to a museum or something just for
He's
fun.
like
Uh,
he's like 1 + 1 2 kind of guy.
yeah, yeah,
Mm,
yeah. So then, and my mom, like she loves music, you know,
mm,
but she got no rhythm, you know. So we always joke about that, but like she has the essence, you know, like the freedom.
right.
Like when sound comes on, she goes for it, but she just lacks the control. But the the idea, like I didn't have any dance around me at the time, so when I saw Rise, something was drawing me towards it. So I started to see it in my high school. Like
Hmm.
people were either crumping or turfing. So like, because there was a Bay Area connection with LA that was, it was just like there was a few turfers at my high school, and they would like, so it was like the hyphy movement, you know. So you'd have people battling at house parties and stuff, and but all this to say, like this, to see what I saw juking when I tried to look up crump and I typed in buck,
Ah,
and Memphis Buckin came up, and I was like, I saw him and I was like, oh, this what? And then I was like, this isn't crump, because there was like a big, it was like on an asphalt thing, and they were all in a
mm,
circle, and I was like, oh, okay, someone's gonna get off in a second, you know? And then, but then I saw like the dopest glides I ever seen in my life, you know? And I was like, so the first thing I learned was gliding because of that.
yo,
Yeah.
word up. Nah, yo, that shit like it's just to think like again how small and how much we don't know about like Memphis, and then you find out this vast majority of history. Even surprisingly, even with Lifey, I remember you was just saying about like how New York history from like I want to say like the 2000s to now in the streets is kind of like not something that gets talked about a lot. Like
Mm.
people feel like flexing in life he just came out of nowhere, like boom, you know. But there's a long history and even just like a whole concept of cultural development and cultural separation within New York that really birthed these styles. I mean, you talking about the early 2000s, mid 2000s to late 2000s, there was a lot of after school programs, but everything was being generated by the teens and the adults that kind of facilitated these things. They didn't really have a lot of creative backgrounds. They were probably just people that like got a degree in something and was just like, yo, you know. So I remember I found out about Lifebeat through YouTube and through just people passing the word around, you know, and being like, yo, there's this new thing called Getting Light. But you guys know Life Feed as a New York thing now. So to you, even hearing like somebody from New York not knowing about Life Feed is like, what? How? But coming up
Yeah.
when I did, like that was an uptown thing. Like that was Harlem and the Bronx and some other places, but mainly those two boroughs. So being I'm from Brooklyn, dancehall, reggae, broke up everything. You know, my older brother actually used to do like clothing designs and a lot of promotional stuff or whatever on the Flex in Brooklyn show. He actually worked at this store called Couture Closet in Brooklyn, where they used to actually document dudes flexing. So like at a young age, I used to be walking past, you see like dudes in there connecting and shit and doing like bruck up and stuff like that and getting filmed to like promo Flex in Brooklyn episodes. And we had BCAT in Brooklyn, and that's where you can even catch the Flex in Brooklyn episodes and stuff like that. So that's all I knew in terms of dance, and then shata dancing, what they call dance hall now. Like you see other people doing the dance hall classes. We used to call that shata dancing back in Flatbush, and I knew dudes who used to shata dance, wear skinny jeans, and the creative recreations and stuff like that. So that's all I knew. When I found out about Life Feed, I'm like, where? What is that? You know? And it was so crazy. I didn't even associate things like the chicken noodle soup or Harlem Shaking with Life Feed, because to
Yeah.
me those are just popular records on the radio, and this is a whole
Yeah.
separate culture. So the confusion was so wild based on me just being limited to being only in Brooklyn my whole life and not really going out anywhere. You know, you would probably go to Manhattan for Christmas shopping or stuff like that, but as a kid, you stayed in your hood. You know what I mean? So your life is just your
That's
block.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's
So
crazy to think like when I'm out there, like we're going like cross town, every borough
everywhere.
basically in a day, you know?
Yeah, man. But there was a time where like you would never go to Harlem. And if you're from Harlem, you probably never went to Brooklyn, you know? So,
That's
yo,
crazy.
I remember the first Life session I went to in the Bronx just to see trains that were underground start going overground. I got scared, bro. I thought I was like, yo, what the fuck? Like, what? You know what I mean? Like, I was like, I
Damn.
never knew trains did this. Like, they went outside.
Whoa.
That's how deep it
Holy
was. Like,
shit.
that's how deep it was,
That's
man. But
nuts.
when I got into the culture and I realized like this is a Harlem or Uptown thing, but this has so much of New York wrapped around it because some of the Lifey beats they would sample things from Brooklyn, they would sample things from Queens and put it into their Harlem Uptown sound. But I'm like, I can relate to that part, and then I would put that piece, and then I started to find out that in the little crevices of Brooklyn, there are Lifey Brooklyn communities that are been generating and doing things right under my nose, and I'm like, wow, you know. And you start getting with that and start realizing that now it's more of a borough thing, kind of like how in the West Coast they got like a Compton pop lock style or like a South Central pop lock style. Like now you got like Brooklyn type of styles, Queens type of styles, Harlem, Bronx type of styles, and you start to realize how it's now slowly becoming more of a New York culture. But at a time, it was strictly Uptown, and it took all of us to kind of get on the train and come together to make sense of it being like a whole New York thing.
It, so in the different boroughs, once it started to spread out, did it take on different forms? Like was there like a Brooklyn, esque style, or was there a Harlem
It
style,
it wa- it
Bronx style?
it was for those who are in the Lifey culture and can understand the vernacular. But at the time, looking outside, it just looked like a bunch of kids doing random shit. You know what I mean? Um,
Mm,
Lifey uptown, if you start from Harlem, that's like a lot of getting like that's like Tonwa, Bad One, Chicken Noodle Soup, Harlem Shake. It's kind of like the way you see people do life feet now, all the party dances in succession. That's why that form of getting light or light feet is kind of like it has the most hip hop feel because it has that bounce. And you
mm,
get that from Harlem. Um, Later on when you start seeing like how dudes uptown would dance a lot more like raw and just like hood kind of like dirty sneakers kind of shit like their tone wop was just
mm.
like mass stank just mad you know what I mean and
Like you mean like harder as in like the
it was
stops or the
it was
like
harder I like to when I came into Life Feed, I came into Life Feed at a specific era where it was just battles. But even when I take a look back and you look at certain uptown like Life Feed dancers, there was a coldness to their movement. Like it wasn't trying to be flashy. You know, Harlem dancers, it's more of
mm,
putting on a show, whereas the Bronx, it kind of had like a hard, rugged style to them. And then you start to see like the transition of like when you watch Uptown dancers battling at the events, their form took a very like similar approach to like how b-boys get down. So you do your wop, and then you'll go into like a power move, like you jump over your leg, you knee drop, come up, and then you lock in. So it had like it was like this real like power move kind of dance. Like it was all about energy. And when I started seeing Life Feed in Brooklyn, like it was just dudes doing straight shoe tricks. Like
mm.
everybody had a fucking shoe trick. Everybody had the tongues of their Adidas cut out. They was doing all these weird tricks. And shoe tricks started uptown. But it was something that I feel like because it was the big thing in the battle that kind of brought a lot of people into Life Feed, like, oh my God, these dudes is doing shoe tricks. I think Brooklyn gravitated to that style a lot more. My first style in life, he was shoe tricking. Before I even got into any footwork or anything like that, I started off doing straight shoe tricks. But as I got deeper into life feet and things started to kind of like come together as far as it not being just borough, but like New York as a whole, the more time spent amongst each other, we started to now add certain things to our styles and kind of switch stuff up. So like in 2010, the Lifey music just started getting a lot smoother. Like people like Ty Trillion, who is like not from Uptown. would produce certain Lifey songs with different samples, and the tone would be smoother. It wouldn't be like this, oh, let's go, let's go. Like from the Uptown,
Mm.
it'd have a more subtler tone. So now the movement changes, you know, and the people who gravitate to that movement, they start to change it with the movement, and then the vibe starts to evolve, and then you start seeing it go from just boroughs to now individual crews and now individual people and their fams, you know, like certain dudes and their creations would just be having a specific style and you latch onto that. Certain teams would have a certain style and you latch onto that. So in the boroughs, you can kind of say it started to change where it's like, yeah, but it was based on vernacular. Like uh a Brooklyn dude probably didn't live in Lifeheat enough, so his WAP will probably be like a little bit more wobbly and like out of pocket. Whereas in Uptown, because they've been Lifeheating from the start, they had like a more finesse cadence to it. You know what I mean?
Mm.
But those things were only differences at the time when Lifey was still being conceived, you know. And to be honest, a lot of us were only really taking dance serious to battle. Like nobody was sitting here and breaking down movement and like, yo, like this style, that style. Everybody was just like, yo, what could I do to win this battle on Friday? You know what I mean? So a
And
lot
were the
of it,
battles often?
the battles are every week, every Friday or Saturday. So people would
Wow.
literally be labbing all week for that next
Yeah, yeah.
battle, you know, literally.
That's something that I think is crucial when you're trying to like put creativity in a container, like a bit of pressure on it
Hmm.
to it really starts to evolve things quick, especially if you take young people where the ego is heavy, like the ego is like real like sensitive and like popularity contest is a real part of that environment
Yeah,
that
man.
it's like if I don't hit this, I like up until that point in your life, that's like social death. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yo,
like,
man. Yeah. And street and even street credibility, like a lot of the way I dance now and like where I've gotten with my style is something that like I saw and I worked on and developed for years. But the confidence to share it and bring it out in people was clouded by what they're gonna think. Is this gonna win a battle? Is it gonna and yo, I can name you so many battles where I've had certain material that I just didn't use because I didn't think it was gonna work, or I just did what I felt like was gonna work in that time. And this is even before entering like all-style dance competitions. This is just one-on-one exhibitions, you know, with me versus another life eater. Then on top of that, in the life culture, we have a culture where everything is kind of structured in teams, but even our teams have structure. So in a crew, you have a CEO, that's the leader. You have a co-CEO, which is like the secondary leader. Then you have a president, vice president, a captain, a top boss, youngest in charge, and a first lady. And then you have like your top five dancers who always battle during the week. And then the members, and then like your side affiliations or your collaboration crews. Like
wow.
that was like a life feed team structure. I was a CEO of my crew, Team Rocket, and like I was responsible as a CEO for like setting up meetings, making sure like your members are labbing or ready for battles, like everything. When we gonna do video shoots, all that kind of stuff. I never really had time to lab when I first got into the life feed culture because it was almost like I'm working at a desk, yo, like just trying to structure how to run a crew. And
Damn.
not to run a crew like we gonna make money or we gonna do shows. I'm just running a crew just to like go battle at the end of the week, you know, and make sure our
Yeah.
team looks good. Like, yo, everybody, we gotta be here on Friday because we gotta hype so and so up because he's battling so and so. You know what I mean? And then that pressure is now all laid on you because whatever happens with your crew, you look back because you're the CEO. So a lot
Mm.
of my development, like I've always felt like a large portion of my dance career, like I never had time to really sit with myself and be like, well, what does Kinen want to do and what he want to lab on? Because a lot of it was just obligation to crew, obligation to lifey, obligation to this culture that I'm living in. Because
Wow.
your ego is on the line, your rep is on the line, your respect is on the line. Like a lot of these things are on the line. And now we're grown young adults. Like most of those things don't matter to us, but picture all that responsibility on a 17, 16-year-old kid, you know,
Yeah.
and got to deal with that in school, and trying to get good grades or whatever, you know, like a lot of that mind pressure is really hard. So for me it's a testament to just being able to like make sense of it now, you know, where people want to learn history and they want to learn the heritage and they go like, oh, why somebody says this but then this person says that, or what's the difference, da, 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 da. Like the difference with us new styles, especially like Lifey and flexing and stuff like that, is that people got to keep in mind we were creating and developing a lot of this as teenagers, you know, and we weren't even doing it to like get on TV or anything. It was literally just for street cred. So
Yeah.
a lot of us weren't consciously like wasn't consciously thinking like I'm gonna be speaking to somebody from California about
Yeah.
dance. You know,
Yeah.
it was all about just preserving your rep and making sure you don't look stupid at the end of the week. And because of that, I never really had a lot of time to develop. But then when I did, it kind of brought me to where I'm at now with my movement. And it's just funny to think about like how far, you know, I've gone, you know, based on what we were just talking about.
Yeah. When did you feel like the sense of like obligation wore off, you know, like you were talking about how you felt like, you know, your creativity was kind of like confined in a way by certain obligations, but then now it's somehow unlocked, you feel, and
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
sense of obligation that's no longer there.
Well, I give like we were just talking about Big Mike. I give Mike like a lot of respect, not just as a like a dancer and an influence in the community, but almost like a mentor. Because he was the first
100%,
one. He's the first one like, yo, fuck people. You know what I mean? Like they don't matter to you. Storyboard is another one. Storyboard, I used to kick it with Storyboard sometimes and we'll be talking about dance, and just the fact that he'd be so irritated with like what I'm saying, he'd be like, yo man, like fuck that shit, bro. And I'd be like, damn, you right. Like there's a
He's
day.
just irritated as hell
Yeah,
with you. Just,
yeah, because I'll see him in the street and I'm like, yo, where you going? He's like, oh, I'm going to 14th Street. Like, I come with you. And then we ride the train and I'll be like, yo, P, like, dudes is hating on me, yo. I just lost this battle or whatever. And he'd be like, yo, fuck that shit. And I'll be like, yo, but like, I want to be animated and I want to make Lifey animation and I want Lifey to be taken serious because everybody looks at Lifey as this play style. And he's like, well, you gotta boss up. Like you can't be like looking soft when you dance. I'm like, yeah, but how I do that? And then P would just be like, yo, look. And then he'll start dancing on the train. And I'll be like, yo, dude, there's no music playing. I'm just like, yo, dude, like people are looking at you. He's like moving, moving, moving. And then like people will be laughing at him. And he'll be like, what, you think I care about these people laughing at me? He'll take somebody's heart, like a random dude, be like, well, look, throw the heart up, eat the heart, start dancing in front of him. Like, I'm not afraid of these people. I'm not afraid of these people. Like just gliding and shit. And
damn.
when I seen people like that, just like be so confident with themselves, I'm like, damn, like I'm over here worrying about like what people think. And there's people out here just doing them. And for me, that's when it clicked, like, yo, I gotta go. And even with that click, it still took time. It still took a lot of me having to sit down and like, yo, pull my hair out and like be really depressed. And it's funny because dance shouldn't be this way. Like we should be enjoying this shit. But
Yeah.
the pain of the trial and error, you know what I mean? And like the pain of just really sitting there and being like, God damn, like I want to do this, but I know people are not going to respect it. You know, being a light feeder and even like being in the all-star dance scene and having to go to all the top 16s and like Harlem Shake and jump around and jump in garbage cans and be all hype and be this silly caricature because that's what Life Feed is known for. So that's how people are gonna know what you're doing. But deep down, you really want to do something else. But you do it because you know that this is what people are gonna see. This is gonna get you to win and make people like cheer you on. And you know it's not you know it's all vapor. Like it doesn't really it's not worth anything. But you still go for it
Yeah.
because you're so young and you're dealing with trying to just do for yourself. All of that, man, was a pressure, you know, and then trying to do that. And then on the flip side, being a cipher is like, yeah, but no, I really got this style and I'm really working on this style. And people are like, yeah, whatever. Like you was just fucking jumping around in the battle. Like I don't know who you was watching, but now you're just trying to be somebody different. And it's like, nah, this is really me, you know? And then you got another group of people that will try to marginalize what you're doing. Like, well, I've seen that before, you know? Like I remember when I first was even trying to like foot tut and like do like all those angles, and everybody's like, oh yeah, I've seen that before. Or you can't do that in a life feed. That's like you mixing popping and life feed. You can't mix styles. You know,
Yeah.
you can't animate or wave your foot. That's not life feed anymore. And it's like, yo, motherfucker, what can I do then, yo? I'm trying to express myself, and everybody's telling me you can't do shit. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it became a whole bunch of like hoo ha and a whole bunch of whatever. But it started to click once like people like Big Mike, you know, Crazy Pop, Caniso, like Storyboard. A lot of these dudes like put the battery in my back. And then just a lot of self and being like, yo, you know, I can do it myself, you know, and I can be that person, you know. I also give a lot of props to somebody like Shock because Shock is like he's like a super old school like New York dancer, but his one track mind almost like put my mind in place. Like he'll be like, well, if you're gonna do it, just do it. And I'll be
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, but how do you? He's like, nah, just do it. Just do it. And I'll be like, fuck. Like, you know what I
Man,
mean?
man.
So I give
That
props
it's
to,
simple. Yeah, it's simple,
yeah,
but sometimes it's that simple, right?
yeah, man. Nah, for real. It is that simple. And it's hard to believe because for the people who watch us, you know, like me and you, I'm pretty sure you've had similar experiences. They look at you and they're looking at you as inspiration, like, damn, like you're so patient, you're so controlled, like you're so dope, you're so creative, you're so this and that. And for me in the back of my mind, I'm like, yo, I remember days where I couldn't even express that. You know, I had it, but I'll be in a circle like, you know,
Yeah, yeah. It's how much is how much of the like your dance is experiencing it versus like for example, I made it like my practice, right? So like lately I've been recording tons of clips of myself,
mhm,
and I've probably done this throughout my whole dance life,
yeah,
majority where I'm like in my backyard and living room. I'm like trying to basically create like a movie with my movement,
mm,
but really it's like I'm thinking about it when I'm getting down. I'm like thinking about watching it already, you know,
mm,
like I'm thinking about what it looks like, and I'm like, I want to make it. I want to make something where when I'm watching it later, I get hyped, Like I want to make a movie that I want to see,
yeah,
That's so when I'm like looking at my dance do a lot of the time I can turn on that real critical lens of like, okay, technically you got to do this better and um but there are moments where I'm like, I'll just take that 15 seconds, chop it up and be like, okay, boom, like
mm.
that right there, that's where we're starting from tomorrow.
Right, right. Yeah. For me, it's hard to even record myself to this day. A lot of like me again going through just like developing and like really working on how to express my true self rather than put that true self in the background and do what people want you to do. Because I've gotten my true self in the front seat and like I've grown a real strong relationship with that kind of movement, it's so special to me that sometimes like I share something and it'll be like, nah, like I don't even want people to see this. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And I'll be like archiving the shit out of videos and all that. And then it's that, and it's also like I guess like an OCD trauma of like you trying to be so good and so clean that like you throw a video up and then it's like, oh nah, that shit didn't look right. Nah, and then
Mm.
the OCD becomes even crazier. You be like in the crop of the Instagram post, my foot is not in the video. Like I gotta redo it, you know. So it goes into like it's like you directing a 1 minute clip. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, yeah.
but a part of me has realized that like when recording myself or filming myself, before I even put the camera on, like I kind of like set an objective, like, all right, if I'm gonna work on this, and then like if I complete it, I'm gonna document it so that people see the finished product of like what it looks like, and then I'll put it out there or I'll have the video and I'll watch it for myself and enjoy it. So if it's not that, then I just kind of like post organic experiences. Like I like to kind of post videos that are of me when I know the camera's not on. Like if I'm not
Mm,
focusing on you recording me and I'm just moving, because I feel like that's when I'm most natural. You know,
yeah,
I don't even like to know people are recording me. Like I kind of like it to be just like a natural environment. And then like if somebody's like, yo, hey, here's this clip of you, I'm like, oh shit, let me see that. And I watch
yeah.
it because to me that's when I'm my most, you know, because even now to this day, like again, I didn't come up in as a dancer, but then even more so, I didn't come up as like I guess like an entertainer. Like that whole thing of having like stage presence and things like that, I had to learn, and even with learning it, I still it's still hard for me, or it's still a battle with me and my personality of like, do I want to be this kind of person, or do I always want to share my art and have people just experience it? Like, am I going to cater to what people are seeing, or am I just going to, you know, be, and then whoever's watching, like they can take what they take from it. So even with that vantage point, there's still like a little like mental battle that I have with me and the
Mm.
camera, where I'm like, I'm dancing and I'm like, this shit is being recorded. Like, you know,
Yeah, yeah. So what is it like? So many people got this thing, man, where like, you see the little red dot, or you're being recorded, and like I got it too, we all have it, or for some people it's different, whether it's like in a cipher or like, okay, now there's a certain expectation because you're a judge, or
hmm
there's all this certain stuff that comes into play, but like, what is the block that happens? Like, what's the difference in your present get down? Like if you're in the moment, and what's the difference between not knowing and knowing somebody's recording?
for me, it comes with the atmosphere that I'm in. Like, for example, when we were at thesis, I think I was enjoying thesis so much that even though I knew cameras were recording, because the intimacy of the event was so strong, I was just so natural with my movement, because it was just like I'm thinking about the people around me, not the cameras. Um, but then when you get these events that's like, yo, I want you to judge this battle, you know, and it's a bunch of people that don't know you, you know, a bunch of people that just like, okay, what is he gonna do? Is he gonna do a super high move or whatever? Then it's like, for me, it's always a decision of, do I just fucking lab in front of y'all right now, or do it like I
Yeah,
do some shit? You know what I mean?
yeah.
And sometimes it leans a lot more towards the labbing. Like it leans towards like, I'm gonna just explore, because to be honest, if I even showcase something, then it's like, who am I showcasing it for? Is it really for me? If it's not, then let me just get down. You know, these people come to see me get down, so I'm just gonna get down, and then whatever happens, happens. And getting to that point is just kind of realizing who you do it for, you know, and like why, and not so much, because there's a why and there's always gonna be a why, but if it's not for yourself, then who? And sometimes I feel like a lot of dancers don't have this conversation with like, do I dance to make people smile or whatever, whatever, or do I dance for me? You know, and some people automatically may jump to like, oh, you know, I dance to share with people or whatever, because it sounds pretty. It sounds like you're not selfish. But to be honest, like sometimes you need to be selfish. Sometimes you need to be like, yo, like I'm here as a guest judge or a guest battler, but I'm here to make moments for my head, for my memory. You know, that's for me and myself. Like whatever
Yeah.
I do right now, like that's for me. You guys enjoy it, cool, but it's really about me in this moment, you know? And if people feel like that's the mentality, then I feel like they'd be able to express themselves more clearly, and then the camera won't matter anymore. And then you can start
Mm.
going back to what I said, like basing it off atmosphere. Do you like the vibe enough where you're not thinking about the camera? Or is the vibe annoying where it's like, damn, this event sucks and I'm about to get recorded? Fuck. All right, what I'm gonna do? You know what I mean?
Just negative after negative thought.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah, it's hard to dig out of that sometimes. Like, it's interesting, like thesis, like for me was, watching you showcase twice was just crazy, bro. Both of those showcases were bananas, man. It was
Yo,
so crazy. If y'all haven't checked those out, peep those. Thesis 2020, thrown by the Floridians, man. Shout out to Hans. Um, but yeah, like,
side note, isn't it crazy how like all this like sad stuff is happening in 2020, but like the start of 2020 was like the best event
yeah,
ever?
2020 like started off super dope, bro.